Welcome to lesson 23. Go ahead and complete the top portion and today's appetizer. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the main dish. Today we're going to actually be talking about the connection that fractions have with decimals. We're going to start that off by actually dealing with money because that's the most real life decimals that we probably deal with most often. So go ahead and looking at the dollars and the coins, how much money is being represented here? I see I have 3 whole dollars, 25 cents, 50, this dime makes it 60, and then I've got 61, 62. So I should show $3.62. We're going to rewrite that amount into the place value chart. I know that 2 of the place values aren't labeled. We're going to get to that, but go ahead and just add this in. So we have 3 in the 1 space, and then our decimal, and then the 6 and the 2 follow. These place values actually have names to the right of the decimal, just like the whole numbers to the left of the decimal do. This first one, we've kind of talked about these in math boxes, but we're going to go more in depth finally. This first one is called the tenths. So notice that THS, that's really important. That tells us it's a decimal place value. You're going to notice that pattern going on for both of these place values, and when you get 5th grade, you'll actually learn about more, and then as you go on throughout school, you're going to learn about way more place values to the right of the decimal. But for now, we're just going to deal with the tenths, and then this next one is going to be the hundredths. So notice there's no oneths. It goes straight to the tenths and then hundredths, and if you were to guess, the next place value is indeed the thousandths. But in 4th grade, we just need to deal with tenths and hundredths. Now, talking about the value of each of those place values, if I have 1/10 is equal to, I would write that out in decimal form like this. I have 1/10, 0 wholes, 1/10. And you're going to notice as I'm saying it out loud, it sounds like I'm saying a fraction, which is exactly how we're going to write it. So if I have 1/10 in decimal form, I have 1/10 in fraction form. For 100th, it's going to look like 0, 0/10, 100th. And again, I'm literally saying out loud the fraction as well. 100th, 100th. This is going to help us with creating equivalent fractions or decimals. So if it gives us a decimal, we want to write it in fraction form. If it gives us a fraction, we want to write it in decimal form. So looking at these decimals first, my trick to this is to simply just read out the decimal because you say the fraction. So if I'm looking at this, I have 0 and, we always read this decimal as and, not point, not dot. So we say 0 and 3/10. This is in the tenths place, so that's how that's the label of this number. So 3/10 looks like 3/10. For this next one, we've got 0 and 4/100ths. So 4/100ths. This next one, we have 0 and, we say this number completely normally. So 87, and then what place value does it end in? That's the label that it gets. So in this case, 87 ends in the hundredths place, so we'd say 87/100ths. And finally, go ahead and try this last one on your own. Yeah, this time the 1 was in the tenths place, so our fraction is 1/10. On the right side, we're going to turn these fractions into decimals. So again, just read out the fraction and you're actually saying it in decimal form as well. So notice there's no holes in front of this. This isn't a mixed number, so we're just dealing with decimals, so we can put a 0 in the whole place and then our decimal. And we've got 25 hundredths. To make sure that it's right, whatever this denominator is, that's the place value that the last digit needs to go in. So 25 hundredths, the 5 ends in the hundredth spot, so we've got it. Next, we've got 9 tenths, so 0 and 9 tenths. Next, we've got 76 hundredths, so we're going to do 76. Make sure that 6 ends in the hundredths place. Go ahead and try the last one on your own. Yeah, this one was 2 tenths, so the 2 needs to end in the tenths place. Let's go ahead and use this knowledge to help us with main dish part 2. This time we're actually going to compare just decimals first. So looking at our comparison, just like we normally would when we were dealing with really big whole numbers, we're going to start in the greatest place value possible, which is in the whole number section first. So even though ones is usually not the greatest place value, in this case it actually is, because the ones place is greater than the tenths and it's greater than the hundredths. So looking at the ones place doesn't help us. The zeros are the same. So we're going to move now to the tenths place. Now looking at this, we could get tricked. We might think like, oh, 9 versus 58. This is easy. 58 is greater. But this is talking about decimals. Think about money. This would be like saying I have 90 cents. There's not a 0 here, but we can always add zeros to the end of decimal numbers. So 90 cents versus 58 cents. This one's actually greater, so that's why we need to go place value by place value. And notice that 9 in the tenths place is bigger than 5 in the tenths place. So 0 and 9 tenths is greater than 0 and 58 hundredths. Let's work our way over. So in this case, our ones place doesn't help us. Our tenths place doesn't help us. This number has a hundredths place, but this one does not. So in decimals, you can always add zeros to the very end. It doesn't change the value. So 5 versus 0, easy comparison. Let's do 2 more together. We've got 1 in the tens place, 3 in both ones places, 9 in both tens places, but then we get a 0 and then a nothing. Again, this nothing is just like saying 0. So this time, both of these are the same number, so we can put an equal sign. Whole number ones place first, they're the same. 5 tenths versus 6 tenths. 0 and 52 hundredths is less than 0 and 62 hundredths. Go ahead and try the next 4 on your own. All right, go ahead and check your work with mine. Now we're going to get into comparing decimals and fractions. And at first you might be like, how can I do that? There are different types of numbers. One's in decimal form, one's in fraction. What we're going to do is we're actually going to turn it into a fraction. Or sorry, into a decimal so that they both match. So we're going to make 0 and 7 tenths. This is already in a decimal, so we're going to turn this fraction one into a decimal as well so we can compare just like we were doing up here. I can easily change 7 1/100ths to a decimal by doing 0 and 7 hundredths. Again, making sure it's in the hundredths place value, which is that second one to the right of the decimal. And now I just compare like normal. Ones place is the same. 7 in the tenths place versus 0 in the tenths place. So 7 tenths is greater than 7 hundredths. Again, let's change them to decimal form. So let's change 8 tenths. So 0 and 8 tenths. Ones place is the same. Tenths place is the same. I'm going to add my 0 on here because it doesn't change the value of 8/10. It just is a placeholder so I can actually compare. 0 and 3. 83 hundredths is greater than 8/10. Last one, transform this fraction into a decimal. So we're going to make it 0 and 31 hundredths. And now we can compare, and we notice that the hundredths place is the only different one, 5 being greater than the 1. So 0 and 35 hundredths is greater than 31 hundredths. This last section is just to practice your knowledge of the place values, so go ahead and do this one on your own. Alright, go ahead and check your work with mine. The place value that was left untouched was the hundredths place. Make sure you add that THS to make sure that it tells us it is in decimal form. Alright, go ahead and knock out your dessert today.